remember that chilly November evening, the kind where the air feels heavier after Halloween. The decorations along Maple Drive were still hanging, drooping ghosts, faded webs, half-deflated pumpkins. I was in my driveway pulling fake tombstones from the lawn, trying to beat the early sunset. Across the street, my neighbor's scarecrow still stood facing my house. It had been there all October, part of our neighborhood's Halloween tradition. Everyone added something spooky, but that one always made me uneasy. It wasn't like the others. His clothes were real, old flannel-worn jeans, and the head was a burlap sack stitched around what looked like a mannequin face, only sharper. Too real. As I gathered my decorations, I noticed his head was slightly tilted down, like it was watching me. I told myself the wind had moved it, but there was no wind that night. The air was still, and the shadows stretched across the cul-de-sac like time had stopped. Dorsey, my neighbor, kept to himself. I barely saw him except when mowing or taking out the trash. The scarecrow was his only sign of Halloween's spirit. Still, that night, something about it seemed off. Its shoulders looked less slouched, more alert. I tried to ignore it, switching out the orange porch bulbs, but every few seconds my eyes drifted back across the street. T was probably just the angle, or maybe my eyes adjusting to the dim light, but I could have sworn its arm was slightly raised now. I stared for a full minute, waiting for movement that never came. Then my phone buzzed, Tyler reminding me about the game. I texted back quickly, trying not to look again. But when I did, my stomach tightened. The scarecrow wasn't facing me anymore. Its head was turned toward my front door. I walked to the edge of the driveway, pretending to check the mailbox just to prove I was imagining things, but from that closer distance, I noticed something else. The burlap sack around its head wasn't stuffed evenly. There were dents where eyes should be, and for a second I saw a faint glint. My pulse quickened, but I laughed nervously. Maybe Mr. Dorsey had put glass marbles inside to make it more realistic. I went back to cleaning, tossing fake cobwebs into a bag. When I looked up again, the scarecrow seemed perfectly still, except for the faint shimmer where its left eye should have been. I blinked hard. That's when I realized it wasn't light reflecting. It was blinking. I froze. The garbage bag slipped from my hand. My first instinct was to find a logical reason. A car reflection, a streetlight, anything. But there were no cars, no people, no movement. Just the sound of my breathing. The scarecrow's face stayed turned toward my porch, the faint flicker still there. I stepped back toward the garage, trying to stay calm. Maybe it had a motion sensor in its head, I thought, something that reacted to movement. But there were no wires, no light, just that slow, human blink under burlap. I told myself I'd go check, but something deep inside warned me not to. My hands went cold, my heart hammering. It wasn't fear of being caught. It was something heavier. Like I wasn't supposed to see what I saw. I stuffed the rest of my decorations into a bin and rushed inside. Inside, the warmth didn't help. I kept glancing at the window, the blinds half open, where I could still see its outline. I turned on the TV, trying to drown out the silence, but my eyes kept flicking back. Every small shadow in my peripheral vision made me flinch. By 9, I finally decided to pull the blinds shut, but before I did, I made the mistake of taking one last look. The scarecrow was gone. My heart skipped hard. I stepped back, staring at the empty yard. There was nowhere it could have gone. The backyard was fenced, no cars had passed. I waited, listening. Nothing. I told myself maybe Mr. Dorsey brought it in, but my gut didn't believe it. The street looked wrong now, emptier somehow, and even though I couldn't see it, I still felt watched. I texted Tyler, asking if he wanted to come over to watch the game. I didn't tell him why. He said he'd be there in 20 minutes. I tried to act normal, lights on, snacks ready, doors locked, but I kept checking the peephole every few minutes. At 9:30, I heard a soft knock, 3 quiet taps. Not the bell. I assumed it was Tyler and opened the door. No one was there. The porch was empty, the street silent. Then, out of the corner of my yard, I saw it, a glimpse of plaid behind the bushes. Red and black, the same flannel shirt the scarecrow had been wearing. I froze, gripping the door handle. The air outside felt heavier now, colder. Leaves scraped across the pavement, though there was no wind. I didn't see anyone, but that flash of red stayed burned in my mind. Slowly, I closed the door, locked it twice, and stepped back. My phone buzzed again. Tyler texting he was almost there. Relief hit for a moment, until I noticed the timestamp. The message was 10 minutes old. He still hadn't arrived. I stared at my phone, waiting for headlights, another text, anything. But then I heard it, Soft footsteps on the porch. I leaned toward the peephole. My pulse thundered in my ears. For a moment, all I saw was darkness. Then something moved. Slowly, steadily. The porch light flickered once, then dimmed. And in that fading glow, I saw it. The burlap face. The scarecrow was standing right at my door. I stumbled backward, knocking over the snack bowl. My breathing turned shallow. I grabbed my phone to call Tyler, but it went straight to voicemail. I turned on every light in the house, trying to chase the dark away. But when I looked again, the porch light was completely out, like someone had unscrewed it. I crept to the window beside the door, moved the curtain just enough to peek. Nothing. The porch was empty. I stood there for what felt like forever before finally forcing myself to sit. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe some kids had moved it. I tried to believe that, I really did, but then I heard it again. A dull scraping sound. Coming from the side of the house, like straw dragging against the siding. I turned off the TV, heart pounding, listening. The sound moved slowly, circling toward the back window. I didn't dare move, but my eyes followed every shift in the noise until it reached the kitchen. The curtain there swayed slightly, like someone was standing right outside. "Tyler?" I whispered. No answer. Just silence. Then 3 slow taps against the glass. 1, 2, 3. I inched closer, shaking, peeking through the narrow gap in the curtain. The porch light flickered back on, and the scarecrow was right there. Its burlap face pressed against the glass, its head tilted, watching me. I stumbled backward, my phone slipping from my hands. Before I could move, headlights flashed across the room. Tyler's car. I ran to the door, threw it open, yelling his name. He looked up from the driveway, confused. "You okay?" he called out. I didn't answer. My eyes drifted past him to Mr. Dorsey's yard. The scarecrow was back, standing exactly where it had been, perfectly still. The next morning, I walked across the street before work. Dorsey was outside, sipping his coffee like it was any other day. The scarecrow stood there again. Same flannel, same stitched grin. It looked exactly the way it always had, like nothing had ever happened. I almost asked him about it, almost told him what I'd seen the night before. But then I noticed something small, right under the scarecrow's collar. Barely visible was a torn piece of black fabric. It took me a second to realize what it was. The same t-shirt Tyler had been wearing last night. I froze, my throat tightening as Mr. Dorsey turned toward me with a faint smile, like he was waiting for me to say something. But I couldn't. I just nodded and walked away. It was the week before Halloween, and our neighborhood looked picture perfect. Every house had pumpkins on porches, cobwebs on bushes, and skeletons hanging from trees. My mom had me hang orange lights while my little sister Emily ran around in her princess costume for the 3rd time that week. Everything felt normal, too normal. That Thursday night, my parents went to a neighborhood meeting, leaving me to watch Emily. The sky turned deep orange before fading into night, and the decorations swayed gently in the breeze. Emily sat on the couch eating candy corn, watching old Halloween cartoons. I scrolled through my phone, completely unaware how quickly things were about to change. It started when Emily called my name from the hallway. Her voice was shaky, uncertain. I walked over and saw her standing by the basement door, pointing with wide eyes. "He's down there," she whispered. I frowned and asked who she meant, but she whispered, "The boy dressed like a ghost." I laughed at first, thinking she was just making up another Halloween story. I told her not to scare herself and reminded her we didn't even have a basement, just a small storage crawl space under the stairs. But Emily didn't laugh. She just stared at that door like she was waiting for it to move. Then she said she'd heard someone talking from behind it, a voice, soft and low, asking her to come play. The way she said it made something in my stomach twist. I tried to stay calm, pretending it didn't bother me. I opened the door, flipped on the hallway light, and showed her there was nothing there. Just boxes, cleaning supplies, a broom. See? Nothing scary. I closed it again and told her to sit next to me in the living room. But she kept glancing toward the hallway, chewing her nails. Around 8, I finally put her to bed, making sure her nightlight was on and the door left slightly open the way she liked. When I turned off the hallway light, I noticed the basement door was cracked open again. I was sure I'd closed it. I sighed, figuring maybe Emily had gotten up again, and this time I shut it tightly and latched it. Back in my room, I turned on my lamp and started my homework. About half an hour later, I heard a faint tapping sound coming from somewhere in the house. 3 knocks. Then silence. Then again 3 more. It didn't sound like wind or pipes or anything mechanical. It sounded like someone knocking. I got up, my heartbeat quickening. By the time I reached the hallway, the sound had stopped. The air felt colder now, heavier somehow. I waited, listening, holding my breath. That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement behind the thin crack of the basement door. It was small, quick, like someone stepping back into the dark. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. Then I slowly reached for the handle. When I pulled the door open, the light from the hallway barely reached the back wall. Everything looked normal. Dusty boxes, a broom, an old Halloween wreath. But then I heard it, a whisper. A breathy voice from deep inside saying, "Don't close the door." My whole body tensed. I turned the light on fast, but the sound was gone. I stood there, heart pounding, trying to laugh it off, trying to convince myself I was imagining things because of Emily's story. I shut the door again and leaned against it, breathing hard until I felt steady enough to move. Later that night when I checked on Emily, she was still awake. She was sitting up, staring at her window. Before I could ask what was wrong, she whispered, "He said he wants to meet you next." I barely slept that night. Every sound in the house felt louder than usual. The creak of the floorboards, the hum of the heater, even the faint rustle of leaves outside. I kept telling myself it was just Emily's imagination, that maybe she'd seen a shadow or dreamed something strange. But her words kept echoing in my head. "He wants to meet you next." She hadn't said it like a joke. She'd said it like a warning. Saturday came and the neighborhood was alive with Halloween excitement. Families were carving pumpkins, kids ran around in costumes, and someone down the street tested a fog machine that rolled mist across the pavement. Mom went out to buy more candy, and Dad was hanging a plastic skeleton on the porch. Everything felt festive, except Emily. She sat quietly on the steps, holding her candy bucket, staring toward the side of the house where the basement door was. When I asked what she was looking at, she said softly, "He was waving again last night." My chest tightened. "Emily, you have to stop saying that. You're scaring yourself." She didn't argue. She just looked back toward the door and said, "He said it's almost Halloween. He likes when it's cold and dark." That night, the temperature dropped sharply, the kind of cold that makes the air smell like smoke and fallen leaves. I was in the kitchen making popcorn when I heard it again. A dragging sound like fabric brushing against wood. It came from the direction of the basement. I turned off the stove and listened. The sound came again, slow and deliberate, followed by a soft thump. I called for Dad, but he was still outside. I took a few cautious steps toward the hallway. The basement door was cracked open again, even though I'd latched it earlier. The orange porch light flickered through the window, casting moving shadows across the floor. I reached for the doorknob, trying to keep my hand from shaking. I swung it open fast, ready for anything. But nothing moved. The air that came out felt colder than the rest of the house, damp and heavy. I leaned in and turned on the light. The same dusty boxes, the same broom, the same Halloween decorations. Except the far wall looked different now. There was an outline there, faint but clear, like something large had been pressed up against it recently. I stepped closer, crouching. That's when I saw it. A bit of thin white fabric sticking out from the bottom corner, wrinkled like part of an old bedsheet. It looked like a ghost costume. My first thought was that Emily had shoved it there while playing. I reached for it, but before my fingers touched the fabric, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned fast, expecting Dad. The hallway was empty. The house was silent again, except for the faint hum of the heater. I backed away from the crawl space and locked the door this time, my hands trembling. When I looked out the front window, I saw Emily in the yard, standing still at the edge of the grass, staring toward our neighbor's house. I went outside and asked what she was doing. She pointed across the yard and said, "He's in their yard now." I followed her gaze. Behind a row of cornstalk decorations half hidden stood a small figure. A boy. He was pale and wrapped in white fabric from head to toe. At first I thought it was another Halloween prop, until it moved. Its head turned slowly toward us. I froze. The sheet rippled slightly in the wind, revealing pale hands clutching the fabric. He wasn't tall, maybe Emily's height, but the way he stood, still, deliberate, made my stomach twist. No kid stood that still for that long. When I blinked, he was gone. I looked down at Emily. She didn't look surprised. She just whispered, "He only shows himself to us." That night, my parents went to a Halloween party down the street, leaving us home alone. The house looked cheerful with the decorations glowing, but the atmosphere felt different, like the shadows were thicker somehow. Emily refused to go near the hallway. I tried distracting her with a movie, but halfway through, the TV flickered and went black. The lights dimmed for a second, then steadied again. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then, from somewhere below, came a faint scratching sound. Slow, uneven, like something moving under the floorboards. Emily turned to me, eyes wide. "He's coming up," she whispered. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I grabbed her hand, pulling her close. "It's nothing," I said, but my voice didn't sound convincing. The scratching grew louder, closer, until it seemed to come from behind the basement door. It rattled slightly, as if someone was brushing against it from the other side. "There's no one there," I whispered, trying to believe it myself. I pressed my ear against the door and froze. Breathing, slow, shallow breathing, right behind it. I jumped back, staring at the door. The sound stopped. For a second, the house was dead silent. Then Emily gasped and pointed toward the window. Outside, standing just at the edge of the yard under the dim porch light, was the boy again. The sheet fluttered softly in the wind. I could see his pale fingers gripping the fabric, pulling it tighter around him, his head tilted to the side, watching us. I grabbed the phone to call Dad, but all I heard was static. Then the porch lights flickered, and in that brief flash of darkness, he was closer, standing at the bottom of the porch steps. Emily started crying. "He found the way in," she whispered. I didn't ask what she meant. Deep down, I already knew. A second later, something hit the basement door from underneath, once. Then again, harder. It sounded like something pushing against the floor, trying to force its way through. I grabbed the flashlight and pointed it toward the door. The latch clicked by itself, slowly releasing. The door creaked open an inch. A cold draft rolled out, smelling like dirt and old fabric. I stood frozen, shaking so hard I could barely hold the light. Then something moved. From the darkness below, a small figure began to rise, step by step. A small black figure moved from the doorway. It stood, white fabric trailing behind. The light caught glimpses of a face underneath, pale skin, hollow eyes. I slammed the door shut, locking it, pressing my full weight against it as the knocking began. It kept going. Slow, steady knocks, for nearly a full minute before it finally stopped. The next morning, the chair was still against the door, but the basement door stood wide open. The latch was broken. My dad said it must have come loose, but Emily refused to go near that part of the house again. Later that day, I noticed something outside. In the neighbor's yard among their tombstones stood a new decoration, a small white figure. Only this one had its head turned toward our house. Even now, when Halloween comes around, Emily still asks if I hear him calling. I tell her no, but sometimes I'm not sure. It was a chilly Friday night during Halloween week, and the whole street glowed orange from porch lights and inflatable ghosts swaying in the wind. I had just finished hanging fake cobwebs on the porch when my best friend Ryan texted that he was coming over. We planned to watch horror movies, eat leftover candy, and carve one last pumpkin before Halloween. Everything about that night felt perfectly normal. Inside, the house was warm and quiet. Except for the soft rattle of decorations outside, my parents were out at a Halloween fundraiser, so it was just me. And the low hum of the refrigerator filling the silence, I dimmed the living room lights, grabbed a blanket and set up my laptop on the coffee table. It felt like one of those calm nights you never forget. Peaceful, easy, almost too perfect. Then, about 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. The message read, "I'm here." I glanced out the front window, expecting to see his car in the driveway, but the street was empty. Only the flickering pumpkins and the shadows of swaying trees stared back at me. I texted back, "Where? I don't see you." He didn't reply right away. I figured maybe he was parking down the street or trying to mess with me. Ryan loved pulling harmless scares around Halloween, so I didn't think much of it. But a few minutes later, I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, heavy, deliberate, like someone trying not to be heard. My first thought was that maybe one of my parents had come home early. But the garage door never opened. The steps kept going, moving from one side of the hallway to the other, steady and careful. "Ryan?" I called out, half laughing, half uneasy. No answer. I grabbed my phone again and typed, "Are you upstairs or outside?" His reply came almost instantly this time. "Outside. By your window." My stomach dropped. I turned toward the big front window in the living room. The curtains were half drawn, and through the gap I could see the faint glow of the yard under the streetlight. But there was no one there. No car. No shadow. Nothing. I started typing, "Which window?" But before I could hit send, the floor above me creaked again. Louder this time, closer. I turned off the TV and stood completely still. The whole house felt different now, like the air had weight. I could hear the faintest sound again. Shifting fabric. Soft steps on carpet. Every light downstairs suddenly felt too dim. Every sound too sharp. My phone buzzed again, making me jump. New text from Ryan. "Come outside, I'll wave." I hesitated. Then I grabbed a flashlight from the drawer and slowly stepped toward the door. Before I opened it, I looked up at the staircase. The hallway above was completely dark, but I could have sworn I saw something. A faint outline, maybe a shadow, standing perfectly still at the top of the stairs. I blinked, it was gone. I stood there gripping the flashlight so tight my hands hurt. My heart was pounding, but curiosity got the better of me. I unlocked the door and stepped outside. The cold air hit instantly, sharp and dry. The neighborhood looked peaceful. Pumpkins flickered on porches, skeletons swayed in the breeze. But there was no sign of Ryan. I called his name softly, half expecting him to jump out from behind a bush. Nothing. The yard stretched quiet under the orange streetlight. Too quiet. Then my phone buzzed again. "I see you." My breath caught. The message came from Ryan, but his contact photo was gone, just a blank gray circle. I quickly typed, "Where are you?" while sweeping the flashlight across the yard. A flicker of movement flashed by my side window. Something white, gone before I could focus. I ran over, shining the light through the glass, but all I saw was my own reflection. Still, the uneasy feeling in my chest wouldn't fade. I went back inside and locked the door behind me. The warmth of the house didn't feel comforting anymore. It felt suffocating. I checked the staircase again. Just shadows stretching up the wall. I texted Ryan, "Are you messing with me?" No reply, just silence. I sat down, telling myself it was a glitch or a prank, when a soft creak came from upstairs. Then, a whisper, low and quiet, like someone breathing words they didn't want heard. I jumped up, shining the flashlight toward the hallway. The beam cut through the dark, landing on my bedroom door, slightly open. The whispering stopped. My pulse hammered as I took one shaky step, then another. Before I could move closer, my phone buzzed again. A message. "I'm in your room, don't come up." I froze halfway up the stairs. That was Ryan's number. But it couldn't be him, he was supposed to be outside. I called, but the call didn't even ring, it just ended. The house went silent again. The decorations outside tapped lightly against the windows in the wind. Then I heard it. The faint click of a door closing upstairs. I forced myself to move. Each step creaked under my feet as I reached the top. The hallway was dim, only lit by the soft glow spilling from my room. "Ryan?" I whispered, hoping to hear his laugh. But instead came the sound of footsteps. Slow, dragging, moving away down the hall. I followed them to my parents' room, my hand trembling as I turned the knob. The air inside was freezing, like a window had been left open. The curtains fluttered softly. My flashlight beam caught something on the dresser. An open phone, screen still glowing. Ryan's phone. A message still open on the screen. "I'm outside your window." For a moment, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. His phone was sitting there, unlocked, message thread still open. The same messages I'd been getting all night. Every single one of them had been sent from this phone. My stomach dropped. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the flashlight. The hallway behind me was silent. The heater hummed softly. My flashlight flickered, then steadied again. Ryan couldn't be upstairs. He didn't have a key, and yet somewhere ahead I heard faint movement. Slow, uneven, coming from my room. I called his name again, just a whisper this time, no answer. I took a shaky breath and crept toward the sound, floorboards groaning under each step. My bedroom door was open wider now. I could see the corner of my desk, part of my bed, but the shadows looked darker, heavier. My phone buzzed in my hand, almost making me drop the light. I looked down. A new text. "Don't look behind you." My whole body froze. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on me. I couldn't move. Couldn't even breathe. Slowly, I turned my head, inch by inch. The hallway behind me was empty, but when I turned back, my bedroom door was wide open now, swinging gently as if someone had just walked through. My flashlight flickered once, and in that dim second of light, I saw it. Someone standing in the corner of my room, tall. Still, head tilted slightly, I couldn't see the face, but in one hand it held something small that glowed faintly blue. My phone. I stumbled back, voice cracking. "Who are you?" The figure didn't move. Then my phone buzzed again. A message appeared on the screen. "Told you I was inside?" My blood went cold. I pointed the flashlight straight at the corner. But it was empty. Footsteps thundered down the stairs, fast, uneven, running toward the front door. I chased after them, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly as I ran. When I reached the living room, the door was wide open. Cold air poured in, and the only sound left in the house was the wind. I ran onto the porch, scanning the yard. The street was empty, just flickering decorations and the rustle of leaves. Ryan's car wasn't there, but on the porch steps, I saw small footprints leading into the dark. My phone buzzed. A new message appeared. "Thanks for letting me in." That was the last text before the number went inactive. The police said Ryan never left his house that night. His mom swore he'd been home watching a movie. The phone I found upstairs, the one that sent those messages, was gone. A week later, on Halloween night, I woke to one new text from an unknown number. "I'm outside your window again." I turned toward the curtains, and in the faint orange light, I saw a shadow standing perfectly still. So tell me, what would you do if you got that message? Check the window or pretend you never saw it? If this story gave you chills, don't go anywhere. The next one's even darker.